Hey everyone, Brian Zane here with another review for Animation Month. Wrestling can be a tricky thing to sell to children. No matter how you dress it up or what story you tell or how safe you make the style like WWE did with Saturday Morning Slam years back, wrestling is still an inherently violent form of entertainment, not to mention its vast history of seediness. But if you make it wild and wacky enough, it's possible to present something that resembles wrestling to younger viewers without pissing off the parents, and that's just what we saw happen in the early 2000s. In 2002, Mucha Lucha burst onto the scene, produced by Warner Brothers Animation and airing on the old Kids WB block. The show is one of the first animated series created with Adobe Flash, so it was quite ahead of its time. It's a story of three friends and a host of other wild and colorful characters who are learning the ways of Lucha Libre, vaguely teaching life lessons to viewers through the filter of Lucha mythology.
A true luchador knows the only thing to fear is fear itself. Oh, and bullies.
A true luchador knows that good or bad isn't something you are, but a choice you make, like flour or corn tortillas.
I never saw this show when it aired, but to get an idea of what it's like, I watched Heart of Lucha, a DVD release that features the first 3 episodes of the series. Sadly, that's the only disc they ever put out of the show. No full season collections were ever released. However, they did put out a straight-to-DVD movie in 2005 during the show's 3rd and final season. Well, that's pretty fitting. Just like a Lucha Libre match, this show went to 3 falls. The hero of the show is Ricochet, who, as you all know, would grow up to become one of the internet's favorite wrestlers. Just kidding, no relation. Anyway, Ricochet is played by Carlos Alazraqui, a veteran voice actor. You really can't go wrong with the guy who played Deputy Garcia and Rocco. Ricochet has dreams of becoming the greatest masked wrestler who ever lived, but he seems to be the most hapless of the rest of his class, somehow always getting into trouble and being the last to learn most lessons. In fact, I'm pretty sure he was held back.
Mi joven isn't going to be late for his first day of school like last year.
Despite this lack of ability and overall training, he's generally able to hold his own in battles. It's like Harry Potter, but with wrestling. Ricochet is almost always accompanied by a talking action figure, El Rey. Again, no relation to anything having to do with Lucha Underground. The luchador the action figure is based on is apparently a big legend in their world, basically a Santo character. He kind of serves as Rico's conscience/drill sergeant, shouting out advice with poor bedside manner.
Sleeping is for wimps! A masked wrestler never sleeps! That's a disgrace! A true masked wrestler would never take that! He's never coming back! You'll never see your compadre ever again! Forget him! Move on! What do you want from me? I'm only an action figure!
Then there's Ricochet's friends. There's Buena Girl, the true babyface who often plays by the rules, but she doesn't get nearly as much love from the writers early on as the Flea, the comic relief who always speaks in the 3rd person and who's basically a walking, talking fart joke.
The Flea is not a bad guy. The Flea helps little old ladies pick their garbage, while the Flea was just resting his spleen. Oh no, the Flea is fine. The Flea just has gas.
Yeah, good, Flea, that was special.
Did he eat and then shit out the practice dummy? Oh god, the things you can get away with on kids shows. The kids all try to adhere to the Code of Masked Wrestling, a giant tome that provides exposition where no adults can.
Ricochet's mega-charged pinball must have caused a rip in the space-time continuum. Traveling back in time to change the outcome of a wrestling match is so against the Code of Masked Wrestling. Don't buy his signature move from a guy in an alley downtown.
The 3 friends all live in a town that's composed primarily of luchadors and luchadors in training, but they don't all necessarily wrestle. Many of them have normal 9-to-5s, like the Flea's parents, who run the local diner, kind of like Super Astro. The kids all attend the... well, I'll let them say it.
It's the foremost world-renowned International School of Lucha!
Foremost world-renowned International School of Lucha!
Foremost world-renowned International School of Lucha!
You gotta say the whole thing, otherwise that's 2 demerits a pop. For an academy that seems to have the hardest rules on the planet, kids are screwing up constantly and suffer no repercussions.
Masked wrestling is not a sport. It is not mere entertainment. It is a way of life.
The Forissel is run by the headmistress, a totalitarian hard-ass who drops in on the students using a variety of moving platforms. The sole members of the faculty are the wonderfully named Mr. Midcarda and Senor Hasbina. At first I thought they just recast the role of the teacher early on, but despite their very similar head shapes and mask designs, they are in fact two different characters.
Come on, show me what you did over your summer vacation or you will be benched!
Then you're gonna have to bust a funky muscle with the H-Man! You're gonna have to wrestle me.
Senor Hasbina gets a whole backstory in one episode, beginning with a flashback to the 1970s, where, as Senor Could-Have-Been, he loses a match against someone named Kid Up-and-Coming. Obviously, these wrestlers were named with the same lions who named their son Scar. During a training match, Ricochet and his opponent open a portal back to the 70s, and Hasbina jumps into it to try and change the past. But in doing so, everything in the present gets messed up, like turning a group of kids into a horrific, mutated blob. You know, classic butterfly effect stuff. At one point in the past, a photographer snaps a picture of Buena Girl with someone who clearly is a younger version of the headmistress. This affects the present by having a classroom full of Buena Girl clones?
Senor Hasbina, will this be on the test?
I mean, I know it's a silly show meant for kids, but that doesn't even make sense. Since this is a fanciful kids show, there are a lot of other logistical things that get thrown out the window. Like, for example, why are so many kids of different ages in the same classroom? Forget the obvious differences in weight class. Why are these clearly older bullies and the little baby Snow Pea in the same room as Rico and his friends who are between the ages of 9 and 12? Speaking of bullies, even though some of the bigger kids pick on Ricochet in class, they aren't classified as rudos in this world. Apparently there's a class full of kids so bad they have their own separate classroom where a jungle has grown that somehow follows the same curriculum as everything else in the school? By the way, the episode where the bad kids class is featured is loosely inspired by the novel Heart of Darkness and its film adaptation Apocalypse Now. It even includes a Colonel Kurtz-like teacher.
Who dares encroach upon the lair of the bad guys? All right, Flea, let's see how bad you can be.
All I want to know is, where's the Zealot Luchador played by Dennis Hopper? The Luchador heads on sticks? The smell of Lucha napalm in the morning? The school is populated with a gaggle of other colorful and creative luchadors, each with their own gimmicks and shape-shifting signature moves. The supporting cast, a reflection on the wide variety of luchadors throughout history, is one of the show's strongest points. Throughout the series, we get to see a little more into the lives of many of these other students. Early on, the show focuses on a girl named Cindy Slam. She stalks the hallways in a perpetually angry mood. In fact, when watching this episode, I couldn't help but be reminded of somebody else I saw recently.
G.I.-ho, you Barbie fucking bimbo! I'm gonna take your arms! One arm off! 2 arms off! I'm gonna rip them off like a fly! And then I'm gonna beat you to death with them like a drum! Bang! Bang! Bang!
And I totally understand why Cindy is so angry. The boys read through what they believe to be her diary, then they kidnap her to take her to a theme park, and that's all after they performed a somewhat elaborate diss track about her.
Flea the song. Angry Cindy Slam.
As chatty as a clam.
She'll put you in a jam.
Angry Cindy Slam. Angry Cindy Slam.
Are we sure these kids aren't the baddies? I'm not sure if this is a recurring thing, but in one episode, our 3 heroes form the most fucked up Ultron in history to defeat a bad guy. Like, okay, the Flea turns into a turkey because he's the comic relief and that's silly, but what do the torch and mirror have to do with anything? And why was it so easy for Rico to transform into a mirror when he could barely find his own signature move? That was the topic of one of the first episodes. Everybody has a special move but Ricochet, and he needs to find his. Desperate to pass his test, he chooses to go to extreme measures.
Ricochet, no! Don't do it! It's against the rules to buy a signature move.
Well, little lady, let me tell you a story about a thing called microtransactions. After being chased by a creepy-ass police officer, a circus troupe, and more, Rico finally comes up with his signature move, in which he turns into a pinball. Hey, is that animal abuse? The Mucha Lucha DVD does a good job laying the groundwork for the show, introducing many of the characters and what they're all about. Based on what I've seen in this 1-hour sample, Mucha Lucha looks like a cartoon I wish I could go back and watch more of. The show's writing is pretty solid. There are a lot of clever gags peppered in throughout that adults and wrestling fans at large are sure to understand, and you do get the occasional free Spanish lesson during the combat scenes. Some of the jokes do go a little out there at times, and some of the punchlines miss the mark, but it's so infrequent that it can be forgiven. The voice acting is really good, and credit goes to the main actors as they all lend their talents to multiple characters throughout the series. The look and feel of the show is very distinct, like hardly any other cartoon I've seen. The artwork is bright and colorful, though at times grotesque. Most of the characters in this show look like they hail from 3 Mile Island. The animation is super exaggerated and can be entertaining, but sometimes pretty hard to watch, especially when it comes to mouths. That is, when they take the time to animate mouths. But I will give credit to the artists for their ability to make every character look unique and distinctive. Even if a lot of the background characters stayed there, they were still able to stand out. Mucha Lucha is an enjoyable kids show with lots of rewatchability. A show that will keep things interesting for fans and non-fans of wrestling alike. It's a great way to learn about the code of masked wrestling. Honor, family, tradition.
And donut!
Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, comment below, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.